What is going on, everybody? It is a very nice and sunny Friday afternoon here in the wonderful state of California. Not really because we can't bet or anything like that, but you make do with what you got, right? So that's enough before I start making people upset due to politics this week. Kind of a hot button issue, but let's go ahead and rock and roll and talk about this early college football slate for Saturday. We are on to week 11, which, man, this season is just absolutely flying by. We have a lot more really good games this weekend, a lot of implications in terms of team seasons and making this playoff cut and what's going to happen here coming up. There's some really big and important games. So we also have a few games mixed in here, which are a little bit unique and I think going to change the slate pretty drastically, in my opinion. So before we get started, please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, as we're going through here, if you disagree with any picks or plays or I'm missing something on my end, please feel free to share it in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. Love going back and forth and learning as much as you guys. So here's my favorite plays and going game by game, kind of breaking it all down. So right out of the gates, we have Florida going to Texas. We're unsure if we're going to see DJ Lagway in this one. Florida decides this week to keep Billy Napier. So I got to think they're going to have a little juice here going into Texas, thinking they could spoil the Longhorn season. But at the end of the day, Florida just doesn't have the dudes to really keep pace here, in my opinion, with Texas. At home, this is a tough spot for Florida. When you look at it, they've got a 12.5 implied team total. Obviously, that might go up a little bit if Lagway's in, but just a really rough spot for the Gators here. On the other side of the ball, I think Texas is a very interesting team when you're looking at this slate. They are going to come in fairly low owned, in my opinion, with a 35-point team total here. Where Florida really makes its bones is more in the rush defense and having a stronger rush defense overall. The passing side is where you can get them. And obviously, Quinn Ewers does not look super sharp here. But I think we could see an interesting spot where Quinn can pop in 3-4 touchdowns through the air against these guys. So at coming in like 5% owned, I think this is a spot you might want to take some shots on this Texas passing game. The challenge is he doesn't always hit value or he doesn't always hit ceiling because Texas just isn't really pushed. And in the games that they are getting pushed, the reason is because Quinn Ewers is not playing very well a lot of the time. So he's a very hard one to project. But again, 5% ownership, GPP play for sure. The running game, I'm not going to be all over. Wisner, I think a little bit. Blue, I don't know. Wisner, it looks like it's going to be more popular, even though his price tag's coming up a little bit. I think it will be lineup dependent. If I'm in a little bit of a less chalky build, I think Wisner and Blue can be played. But if you want to just get exposure, to this, Blue's not a horrible play as well, coming in as the lower owned guy. At the receiving position, Ryan Wingo, Gunnar Helm, Isaiah Bond, and Matthew Golden are the four that are in play. Again, another reason why it's tough to stack Texas is just because you don't quite know where the points are going to come from, as we've talked about all season. So I think all these guys are interesting, especially Wingo and Helm, just because their price tag being in the low threes, really opens things up for a lot of other spots. And coming in fairly low ownership, these guys all have multiple touchdown upside. I don't mind taking shots on those two there. So that's probably the way I'm going to attack this. Remains to be seen if I'm going to take some shots here with Mr. Ewers. Next game up, West Virginia will be without Garrett Green, it looks like, playing on the road in Cincinnati. 25-point team total for the Mountaineers, 29, almost 30 for the Bearcats. In this one, I think Marichal is somewhat interesting just because, again, 6,800 for a starting quarterback in this offense is not the worst play in the world, in my opinion. White and Donaldson, they're coming in fairly cheap, but the problem with them, again, is they're going to just really eat into each other's workload here. So probably not an area where I'm going to go. Cincinnati has given up quite a bit on the ground this year. So again, it's not like the worst play ever if you want to take a shot on White or Donaldson. I always tend to lean Donaldson, but there's no real rhyme or reason for that. These guys, game by game, will split up the workload, and sometimes one of them gets there, sometimes it's the other. Let's see, the receiving core, not a ton. Hudson Clement or Traylon Ray are probably the two, maybe Cole Taylor, that you'd look to. All of them are on the field the majority of the time, about 50% or more snap counts per game. All of them are rated at like 4 to 5 targets per range in terms. So nothing like spectacular here, but if you think West Virginia keeps it close, I do want to consider taking some pieces from them. There's a lot worse games, I think, on the slate. Brendan Sorsby on the other side, 7,900, I think is a good play. He's been pretty solid all year long. Corey Kiner, same thing, 5,900. He's going to get a little bit of ownership here, but he's, I think, a pretty good play this week. 10, 12, 15, 20% ownership, somewhere in there. But again, the spot's really solid. And I think he could definitely, pay off that. No problem at all. And the receiving game, Cincinnati, I always lean Henderson just because he's the alpha in the room. But Tony Johnson and Joe Royer are also interesting because of price tag. Again, we have a decent amount of value this week. Coming in 3,600, 4K. They're going to get a little ownership. But if you like Cincinnati here with a 30-point team total at home, I don't mind it at all taking some shots on game stacks here. Stacks here. Or if you want to get pieces with like a Kiner and Henderson or Kiner and Johnson, I think that's an interesting way to build. And I think it's definitely doable with the Cincinnati offense. So next up, we have Syracuse going to Boston College. Let's see. BC is a 2-point home favorite. Both of them in the mid-20s for implied team total. I think both quarterbacks are okay to play in this game. McCord is a little bit expensive. Obviously, we've seen the highs and lows from this guy. I don't necessarily think we're going to see that here, but you never know when someone's going to throw 4 pick sixes in a game. But yeah, I think, again, 9K is starting to get up there, obviously price tag wise. I think LeQuint Allen's a good play at 8,100. He's going to be, getting some ownership for sure. So going to the passing attack here, not a lot of people are going to be doing. Pena, Meeks, Gadsden are all okay, in my opinion, in the passing game, but you're going to pay for it. Like, this is not a super cheap stack overall. So if you're going to do it, I think you go for it and you stack up, at least 1, maybe 2 pass catchers and possibly bring it back with somebody on the other side just because you need Syracuse to really put up a big score here to pay off some of the stack price. So, but McCord, Allen, again, Pena, Meeks, and Gadsden are all very much live here and all project pretty good in this one. Boston College, Castellanos, again, 6,600. He's going to get some ownership just because of that price tag. I think he's in a pretty good spot. My first lineup I built this week had Thomas Castellanos in it. So people are going to play him. They're going to look at the price tag. They're going to look at what he's done this year. It's just it's kind of a mispricing in my opinion. So I like him. I always like Trayshawn Ward. He's always a good play in my opinion. He gets used in the passing game. He gets involved in the passing game. He gets 2-3 targets a game through the air. And he definitely has, some ability to break one and really take some chunk plays to this other side. So I think Ward at 4,700 is a good play. And then Lewis Bond, Kamari Morales at receiver are probably the 2 guys you're going to want. Bond being the number 1 clear as day for BC. Next up, we've got Georgia Tech at home versus the U. Let's see if Miami can continue this rocking and rolling that they have this year. Georgia Tech is not going to back down from these guys. They are, going to challenge them. They're going to play aggressive. That's Georgia Tech and their coach. I would not be shocked if they give Miami a little bit of a handful. I called it a few weeks ago that I thought Miami might get pushed a little bit by Duke. Louisville pushed them. So these guys are not totally immune to giving up points. And to be honest, they fall behind a lot of games so far this year. So Georgia Tech with Haynes King, the only problem with him is, again, he's getting expensive as well, 8,500, but he's got a solid projection here. He's not going to be owned hardly at all. Jamal Haynes, same thing, good projection, not going to be owned. Rutherford, Singleton, not going to be owned. All good projections here. I have no problem at all going to Georgia Tech in this spot as a very, very low-owned, interesting team. Again, at home. That's going to be revved up for this one. They get a chance to possibly spoil Miami's season. Miami's got that target on their back right now, and everyone's coming for them. So I think this is a very interesting spot for Georgia Tech. Miami, on the other hand, Cam Ward. If you got the money, just keep playing him. The guy is putting up 30 to 40, DK points a week. He has had like one blunder where it was not a great game, but his ceiling and his floor are both gigantic. Damian Martinez and Fletcher in the backfield. These guys continue to split carries. Martinez leads the snap shares and the touches per game, but Fletcher absolutely mixes in. I think he punched one in last week, and he went down in price, so I don't quite understand that. Some people are absolutely going to play Fletcher at 3,900, no doubt about it, and I don't necessarily mind that at all, because if he gets in the box there and even 50, 75 yards on the ground, like, he's hitting value there. So I think Fletcher's an interesting play. Martinez, if you think this one goes a little bit more on the ground. But passing is usually how Georgia Tech gives it up. So I think Cam Ward is the side you want. In the receiving game, it's Restrepo. He plays every single play. He receives the bulk share of targets per game. He's the number one. He's priced like it, but you are going to get a bona fide number one receiver in the country. Very good play, in my opinion. Isaiah Horton, Jacoby George. Jacoby George's price tag is like wildly low, which is pretty nuts to me. But 3,900 for George. I like taking shots on him, but Horton, Restrepo, both also very solid. None of these guys are going to get massive ownership, 10, 15%. I have no problem with that to keep taking shots on this Miami offense. Next up, Minnesota road favorite against Rutgers. The glass slipper has fallen off Rutgers, and Minnesota's a 6-point favorite on the road. Brosmer at 6K. Not a lot of people are going to be going there, but interesting play. He's had a few really good games this year. Decent projection. And again, 6K. If you're looking for a pay down quarterback and to kind of get off of the chalk from Castellanos, I don't know. I don't think it's the worst play in the world, to be totally honest with you. There's some other guys down here in the 6K range I probably prefer, but I don't think you can like totally cross Brosmer off and be like, no way. That's just my opinion. Darius Taylor, 8,700. He looks awesome, and he's going to be owned. And if you don't play him and a quarter to a third of the field has him, you better be able to find a way to make up some of those points, because he's probably going for 25 to 30 points this weekend. Rutgers' rush defense is nothing to write home about. That's what they want to do. So it's Darius Taylor, and for me, Daniel Jackson. Those are the two, in my opinion, you want on this Minnesota team. Jackson, the clear number one, gets about 9 to 10 targets per game, which is more than double than anybody else on the team. He's 5,500, so he's still too cheap. And I think he's a really good play, even though he's going to get some ownership. Rutgers, on the other hand, I think Monagai, if he's healthy, he's had the Q tag all year. He continues to play. So I'm not too worried about that. But 7,400, I don't know. I think he's definitely a GPP play only. Dymere Miller, 4K is an interesting play as well. But I have no interest in the Greek rifle here at 5,300. He's not a good football player. So Monagai, Miller, those are the two you'd look to if you want to get some Rutgers into your stacks and get a little bit different. Next up, we have Ohio State hosting Purdue, where Ohio State's a 38-point home favorite. With that being said, there's nothing really on the Purdue side that I want to play. I guess Max Clare, if you think that they're just going to pepper him with targets, is okay, but not really my cup of tea. Just being, again, 4,100. There's other guys here in games that I have interest in that are in that like low 4K, 3K range, like than Max Clare. But if he was a little bit lower, I might consider it, just not really for this slate. Like I talked about, there's some guys for Texas. There's some guys and some of these other spots that are in low 4Ks, and just a solid. Ohio State, Will Howard, good play in my opinion, 8,100, huge favorites. Judkins and Henderson, I think he could take shots on. Jeremiah Smith, Igbuka, take shots on. Ohio State should pound these guys. And with the 45, 46 team total, I definitely want some pieces of Ohio State in my lineups. The next one up, I'm going to be pretty open on. I think Army at North Texas is a great game to get a chunk of. Both teams over 30-point team total. Bryson Daly missed last week, and everybody scrambled to adjust their lineups last minute. Kanye Udo took over and had a great game. He is going to be massively owned this week. One of the highest owned players on the slate. Give me Bryson Daly all day over paying, for Udo, who's going to be 40, 50% owned, hoping Daly just nukes this thing. So I'm back on Daly this week. Chandler Morris is absolutely having an amazing season. He is at 9,400, but he has paid it off more than enough. He is not going to be super highly owned. Neither will his receivers in Sheffield and Ward. I think both of those guys are very much in play. The running back, if you want to go there, Sibley, 3,200. If you really want to save price, like he's your guy. He's going to start, but just not really where I want to go. Same with Shane Porter. Kind of depends. Both of those guys are in the mix there. It's just kind of an ugly, murky situation down low there. Few more games. I'm going to try to rifle through this pretty quick here. We have Ole Miss taking on Georgia. Right out of the gates, I have a little interest in Jackson Dart here. I know Georgia's coming in as a 2-point favorite. I think Lane Kiffin knows this is his last shot to kind of shut up some of the haters who say he can never get it done and all that. Dart is super expensive. We don't know yet if Trey Harris is going to play, but we saw last week what he can do, Dart. And again, you don't beat this Georgia team by running the football. And even so, Henry Parrish is out of this one. So I think it's Dart all the way. And if they can protect him a little bit, I think he can get some things rocking and rolling here. So I like that the game's at home. I have a little interest in Ole Miss here. Georgia, nothing for Carson Beck. His price is coming down, which is great, but he's just not been very good overall. Trevor Etienne, I'm going to go back to him. He was my highest owned player last week. Absolutely burned me. But as in life, as in DFS, you go back to him, and hopefully it looks like the market is doing the same and jumping off. So I'm back in. Receiving core, love it. I guess a 4,700 is an okay play. Arian Smith, Dylan Bell as well, both fine. But Lovett's going to come in with the ownership. So my recommendation is probably Smith or Bell. Kind of up to you guys, though. Iowa State, I'm back to Rocco Becht. Same thing as we talk about every week with Iowa State. They're a road favorite here. They've got two very clear pass-catching targets in Higgins and Noel. And he's just going to feed those two guys. So I'll play Becht, and I'm going to play Higgins and Noel, and I'm just going to ride that wave as far as it will take me. Kansas, no real interest in Jalen Daniels here at home. Talk about just an up-and-down season. Been pretty rough for these guys. I don't love it. I think there's better quarterbacks here. But at 5,800, we've seen him have games where he can absolutely hit value and be a really good play. So not really my favorite here against Iowa State this week. Devin Neal is going to come in, fairly high ownership at 6,700. I'm probably just going to fade this Kansas one overall, in my opinion. Luke Grimm as well at the receiving position. You can make an argument they're too cheap, and maybe so, but I just think there's other spots. Virginia Tech, Kyron Jones, Tootin should be back this week. I have some interest if they're going to play. Clemson got absolutely mollywopped last week and exposed. I do think Clemson bounces back here. We all know everyone loves to pound on Dabo and what he does and, his philosophy on things with the transfer portal. But look, every team for the most part runs into a buzzsaw and they just get absolutely rocked. Look at Alabama lost to Vandy. Everyone goes down at some point. So for the most part, I think this was just one of those games for Clemson. They just got punched in the mouth. It was a bad spot for Clemson. I think they bounce back here. Virginia Tech is not the same team as Louisville. I know they got exposed a little bit, but I think Clemson takes care of business here. So with that being said, I do like Tootin and Drones a little bit. Their ownership is going to be suppressed and way down. I'll take a few cracks at it here, but my favorite is going to be back to the Clemson side. Again, no one's going to be playing the passing game because of last week. Everyone's going to Maffa, who I think is a good play at 6,500. But I'm going to take some shots on Klubnik and Antonio Williams again. They've been a very good duo. Last week they even scored it right out of the gates, and I was like, oh, here we go. And then there was just an absolute avalanche in that game. So, yeah, Michigan, Indiana, no interest really in Michigan outside of Colston Loveland at 4,800. I think he's a pretty interesting play. He's their tight end. He's the only one in that offense that actually puts up points. Indiana, yeah, I like Indiana here. They got a 30-point implied team total. Rourke has been awesome. 7,400 is a good price tag. Not as much on the running backs, but Justice Ellison is an interesting play if you think that's the way this goes. But I want to be, pairing Rourke up with Surratt. That's the guy. He's the number one. Bounced back last week with Rourke back. So I definitely want to get some pieces here of Indiana, who's definitely on a collision course here if they win this week to take on Ohio State here, I think, in 2 weeks. So this is a big one. They take care of business versus Michigan. They get their shot kind of at the title. So we'll see. Texas Tech, last game up, host Colorado in a big matchup down in Lubbock. Baron Morton at 6K, I'm going to take some shots on, as is a lot of people in the industry. Just, what are you doing? 6K. Taj Brooks at 8,400 is a really good play as well. He had a great last couple of weeks. They're going to need him this week to beat Colorado, who's playing very well. So I'm going to be taking some shots here at Brooks. Josh Kelly and Caleb Douglas are your two in the passing game. If you are going to Morton, that's who you're going to want to get into your lineups. Kelly's going to get a ton of ownership, and nobody really else here. So I think Tech here is a very interesting play if you think the home dog comes alive down in Lubbock. Colorado trying to find a way into the playoff. They're very much alive. 33-point team total. Shador has been really, really freaking good this year. But, man, 8,900 is a lot, just like some of these other quarterbacks. The running game, fairly non-existent. So you know what you're getting with Colorado. It's Sanders, it's Hunter, and it's LeJohntay Wester. For me, 9,500 for Hunter is just absolute bananas. But he may get there. I don't know. I prefer to play Sanders with Wester and just hope and pray it's not a Travis Hunter 3-touchdown game. But that's the way I'm probably going to be looking at it. So I'm definitely going to take some shots on these guys. Again, kind of recapping Ward, Daly, I think Shador, I think Klubnik and Dart are very interesting dart throws. Rourke, Castellanos, and Baron Morton and Rocco Beck. Those are the guys that I'm going to be really trying to pinpoint down with the teams I like. But big slate. Hopefully this helped everyone just kind of break it down and solidify a little bit more of your player pool and where you're going. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully one of us can take this thing down. And until next time, good luck.